It is time for our 6 p.m. news over Camdis Television. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Let's begin straight away with our headlines. Speculations continue to grow within Cameroon's political space over a possible appointment to the position of vice president, driven by public debate and media commentary. Nevertheless, the constitutional framework makes it clear that any decision regarding the creation or filling of the post depends entirely on the discretion of President Paul Biya. The Minister of Women's Empowerment and the Family has presided over the official opening of the 2026 annual conference of its ministry in Yaoundé, bringing together officials from all 10 regions to raise strategies for protecting women and girls. You have these stories and more in a bit. As you heard in one of our lead stories, as Cameroon's political landscape or political class awaits the next major institutional appointment, the office of the Vice President of the Republic, there has become a lightning rod for speculation. Television debates, newspapers, columns, and social media feeds are awash with shortlists exclusions and prediction delivered with the certainty of done deals, yet behind the noise, a constitutional reality persists. The power to appoint rests solely with the President of the Republic, His Excellency Paul Biya. Bertrand Teta tells us in the following commentary.
The commentary circulating in political circles this week captures a recurring phenomenon in Cameroon's public life, the moment when institutional silence becomes a space for projection of ambition, fantasy, and sometimes excess. For weeks, analysts and commentators have treated the vice presidency as a trophy already distributed, anointing favorites and dismissing others in what the text calls an unofficial competition where the hats already seem handed out. The appointment to a high office of the state is a discretionary act of the President of the Republic. He alone determines the choice, the timing, and the term. He alone controls the clock. He alone knows who, when, and how. The commentary notes, underscoring the attempts to stir influence or predict the decision with certainty, understand the nature of presidential authority. Such speculation, the text warns, carries collateral damage. The debate turns more corrosive when it shifts from competence to lineage. The commentary projects the notion that family background, whether one is the son of the president or comes from another horizon, should serve as a ground for exclusion or suspicion. Citizen is not hierarchical. It's state. It is exercised in equality of rights and duties. The critic goes further, targeting the tone of current discourse to devalue some in order to elevate others, to level presumptions of guilt. To reduce career to caricatures does not elevate debate. Instead, it reflects agitation more than any real contribution to national reflection. The president, the text stresses, remains the guarantor of balanced stability and the continuity of the state. His prerogative is exercised within the confidentiality of the state and in respect for institutions. Until he acts, the hats placed on potential appointees are merely speculative constructs. The commentary closes with a civic appeal: restraint, respect for individuals, and trust in republican mechanisms should guide public discourse. The intervention lands at a sensitive time, with succession questions never far from Cameroon's political conversation. Any vacancy or anticipated appointment at the top of the executive triggers intense lobbying, both open and discreet. The commentary functions as a check on that impulse, recentering the debate on institutional process rather than personality. Its insistence on equality of citizenship is also notable. In a political environment where kinship and region often features in analysis, The text pushes back against hereditary framing and calls for assessment based on merit and service. For the media and commentariats, the message is cautionary. Speculation is not analysis and anticipation is not influence. The distinction matters for public trust and for the reputation of officials who may never have sought the roles projected onto them. As of now, no official communication has been made regarding the vice presidency. The only certainty, the commentary argues, is that the decision lies with President Paul Biya at the moment of his choosing. Until then, the Republican posture is patient and measured.
On April 23, 1994, Cameroon witnessed the civil wedding of President Paul Biya and Chantal Biya in Yaoundé. 32 years later, their marriage has become one of the longest-standing unions at the helm of the state, symbolizing stability in both their private life and public responsibility. We have Bertrand Teta once more in the following report.
President Paul Biya, then 61 and a widower since the passing of First Lady Jeanne-Irene Biya in 1992, married Chantal Vigouroux, then 23. The wedding was held in the solemn yet discreet setting, attended by family members, close collaborators and senior state officials. The union came 2 years after national mourning for the former First Lady and signaled a new chapter in the personal life of the head of state. For Chantal Vigouroux, the marriage meant stepping into the role of First Lady of the Republic at a young age. Together, President Paul Biya and Madame Chantal Biya have built their family at the Unity Palace. They are parents to 2 children, Paul Biya Jr. and Anastasie Brenda Biya Eyenga. Madame Chantal Biya also became stepmother to the president's 2 older children from the first marriage, Frank Biya and later Roger Biya. Over 32 years, the couple has maintained a family life that balanced the mandate of state with private milestones, birthdays, academic achievements, and family gatherings. The First Lady has often spoken of the Unity Palace as both a seat of power and a home where the couple shares meals, receives relatives, and observes religious holidays. Their marriage has been lived largely in public view. Since 1994, Paul and Chantal Biya have appeared side by side at the principal ceremonies of the Republic. On May 20th each year, they jointly preside over National Day celebrations at the May 20th Boulevard, receiving military honors and greeting diplomatic corps. They welcome visiting heads of state together, host state dinners at the Unity Palace, and represent Cameroon at international summits. Madame Chantal Biya has accompanied the president on official visits abroad, from United Nations General Assembly in New York to AU Summit in Addis Ababa and bilateral trips to Paris, Beijing and Moscow. While President Biya has steered the affairs of state since 1982, Madame Chantal Biya defined her role within their marriage through social and humanitarian engagement. The same year as their wedding, she established the Chantal Biya Foundation, dedicated to mothers, children and vulnerable persons. In 2002, she launched African Synergy Against AIDS and Suffering, bringing together African First Ladies in the health fight. Her designation as UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador further extended her platform. Their marriage has thus functioned as a partnership of distinct but complementary missions: governance and continuity on the president's side, compassion and social outreach on the First Lady. This duality has been visible during crisis, joint visits to hospitals, condolence messages after disaster, and calls for solidarity where both speak as a couple to the nation. After 32 years, the marriage of Paul and Chantal Biya has become more than a personal story. Their life together reflects a model of partnership at the highest level, one echoed in family, expressed through protocol, and exercised in service. As they begin their 33rd year of marriage on April 3, 2026, the presidential couple remained a fixture of national life, 2 individuals whose wedding day in 1994 set the course for a shared journey that continues to uphold in the public eye and in the privacy of the Unity Palace.
In a clear display of inter-regional party cohesion, Cameroon's Speaker of the National Assembly, Right Honorable Theodore Ndato, received a delegation from the East region on April 22, 2026, led by the Minister of Public Service and Administrative Reforms, Joseph Lay. The group visited the Speaker's Santa Barbara residence to offer congratulations and reaffirm their support for his leadership of Parliament. We have Bertrand Tita.
The high-profile courtesy call brought together senior political figures and custodians of tradition from the East, a region known for its loyalty to the ruling Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, CPDM. Minister Joseph Lee, speaking on behalf of the delegation, described Right Honorable Datu Theodore's election as Speaker as a brilliant outcome that consecrates an exceptional journey at the service of the National Assembly and the nation. Addressing the Speaker, Minister Joseph Lee traced Datu's rise through the ranks of both Parliament and the CPDM, stressing that years of discipline, service and loyalty to party ideals had earned him the trust of the head of state. The minister said the East region saw in Datu a leader whose record in legislative work, community development and party mobilization made him a natural choice to preside over the lower house. The delegation included several traditional rulers from the East whose presence added cultural weight to the political endorsement. Their participation was framed as an expression of grassroots backing, linking the authority of Parliament to the legitimacy of traditional institutions. In his response, Right Honorable Datu Theodore welcomed the delegation with visible emotion, calling the visit a wonderful gesture and show of support that reinforced his sense of responsibility. He addressed his visitors as brothers and sisters and urged them to preserve unity as the foundation for both party strength and national progress. Remain united and work for the growth of the CPDM party in particular and the nation at large, he said. The Speaker used the occasion to reiterate his gratitude to President Paul Biya for bestowing his confidence in his humble person. He told the East Region delegation that the task ahead, steering debate, overseeing legislation and representing Cameroon in parliamentary diplomacy, will require collective effort. For the CPDM, the optics of traditional rulers from the East standing alongside Minister Joseph Lee to back Datu Theodore reinforced the party's message of unity and continuity. For the Speaker, the delegation's message was unambiguous. His support stretches across regional and traditional lives, giving him political capital to lead an assembly tasked with lawmaking in the complex national context. The audience ended with the customary exchange of pleasantries, but its political resonance will linger. It demonstrated, as one delegation put it, that the confidence of the East is with the Speaker and the confidence of the Speaker is with the nation.
And onto this sad note, Cameroon has lost a prominent political figure, one-time former Minister of Post and Telecommunication and one-time ambassador to Israel, Jean-Pierre Biyibiti Essam, passed away on April 22, 2026 in Israel. The 76-year-old journalist by training leaves behind a long, eventful and not uncontroversial career. Promise Akante tells us more about the fallen statesman in the following report.
Born on July 20, 1949 in Vula, near Ebolova, Jean-Pierre Biyibiti Essam's journey began in the print media after training at the Higher School of Journalism in Yaoundé. His early career included roles at Cameroon Tribune and CRTV, where he led the news department in the early 1990s, always driven by a passion for informing the public. His transition into public administration was gradual and steady. He served as technical advisor, special advisor to the presidency, and secretary general at the Ministry of Posts, quietly advancing through the ranks. In 2009, President Paul Biya appointed him Minister of Posts and Telecommunications, a role he held until 2015. Later, he was assigned to Israel. Through presidential decree of May 31, 2018, he was appointed ambassador to Tel Aviv an important post that fosters security cooperation between Cameroon and Israel, built on years of discreet but meaningful collaboration. He served there until February 2026. Aside from his diplomatic and public service contributions, Jean-Pierre BTB Sam was also a dedicated author. In 2004, he published Cameroon, Conspiracies and the Sound of Boots with La Matin Cameroon, a heartfelt 120-page reflection on the country's political unrest. One shadow that lingers is the 2009 scandal. While serving as Minister of Communication, he faced accusations of depositing 130 million francs CFA into his personal account, funds meant for media coverage of Pope Benedict XVI's visit to Cameroon. Though the case sparked controversy, his career continued and no formal conviction was ever made. This unresolved chapter remains a reminder of the complexities and injustices that can exist within justice systems. Yet, beyond controversy, Jean-Pierre BTB Sam's life embodies a profound intellectual strength, 3 doctorates, high-level technical roles, and an active voice in debates about Cameroon's digital future. His journey reflects resilience, dedication, and a deep commitment to his country, inspiring many who follow his path.
Faced with rising social ills, the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and the Family has opened its 2026 annual conference to reset strategy across all 10 regions, convening officials from central, dissolved and specialized technical services at the Yaoundé Conference Center. For 2 days, delegates will hammer out concrete resolutions under the theme Stepping Up the Empowerment of Women and Families in a concrete or in a context marked by emerging social ills. We have Melanie Bo in the following report.
Meeting presided over by the Minister of Women Empowerment and the Family brought together collaborators from all 10 regions to translate into action the orientation given by the head of state to the ministry. The conference, which is scheduled for April 23rd to April 24th, aims to examine faults and gaps identified during the last annual meeting.
The government in general and the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and the Family in particular is not ignorant of the cruelties, the ongoing cruelties going on in our country concerning violence. I think every Cameroonian is concerned, and the conference is not just convened for that.
The objective is to ensure coherent implementation of the presidential directive across all 10 regions. The head of state in his November 2025 placed the situation of women and youth at the heart of his 7th term, calling for better protection and responsibility.
So we have to sit and look at how we implemented recommendations from last year's conference, what went wrong, what we did well, and now how to integrate the new orientations given by hierarchy, particularly following the message of the head of state at the end of the year and the commitment he made during his swearing-in.
Government representatives, technical and financial partners and regional delegates will use the session to assess the relevance, pace and the effectiveness of current interventions. Special attention will be given to collaborators working under difficult conditions in the far north, northwest and southwest regions where security and humanitarian crises continue to complicate ministry action.
We condemn all this violence because violence has become a routine. You are not afraid to kill. So we condemn it and we hope that the action that are being undertaken, I would like to mention here that there is a law in the pipe on violence on women and girls, and we hope that this law will go through and be adopted in the next few.
At the end of the meeting, all proposals will align with the conference theme, stepping up the empowerment of women and families in a context marked by emerging social ills.
The Minister of Forestry and Wildlife has urged members of the anti-corruption unit of his ministerial department to identify, address and find appropriate solutions to problems of corruption they will face in the execution of their duties. Minister Jules Doreen Ndongo was speaking in Yaoundé this Thursday as he officially installed the team of their function. We have details of the story in the following report compiled by Asogoma Mohamed and Promise Akante.
Made up of members of the administration, the civil society, parliamentarians and other actors, the anti-corruption unit of the Ministry of Forestry and Wildlife is charged with improving the behavior of collaborators by being objective and professional in their duties.
While working with objectivity, transparency, professionalism, they can help the ministry to improve the behavior of our collaborators.
Minister Jules Doreen Ndongo celebrates the strides made so far in improving the image of the Ministry of Forestry and Wildlife on CONAC's corruption classification table while imploring the newly installed team to do better.
When you read CONAC reports, you'll see that these last years we have improved our behaviors, we have improved our ranks between administration service, public service, which are subject to those malpractices.
Headed by Bruno Mfu, the team was urged to promote professional ethics in public service, identify factors that can lead to corruption in the Ministry of Forestry and Wildlife, and work with CONAC. They are thus charged with identifying, addressing and finding appropriate solutions to the problem of corruption.
We expect from them to identify, address and find appropriate solutions to problems they may face during their duties.
The forestry and wildlife subsector constitutes considerable economic, social and strategic stakes. The sustainable preservation of our forestry and wildlife resources, the equitable valorization of the fallout of their exploitation, as well as the credibility of public actions, demand that the ministry's administration be exemplary.
And if you're just joining us, it is the 6 p.m. news over the Republican channel. Let's now take a tour out of the country to get updates of what make news. First up will be in Zambia, Libya, and then the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have details of these stories in the following report. Authorities in Zambia have taken custody of the body of former President Edgar Lungu following a prolonged disagreement with his family over his burial arrangements. Lungu passed away last June at a clinic in South Africa, and officials confirmed that his remains were removed from a funeral home in Pretoria despite the family's request for a private burial in Johannesburg without the presence of his successor and political rival Hakainde Hichilema. However, a South African court had earlier ruled that the body be returned to Zambia for a state funeral. The United Nations has warned that Libya is at a critical turning point, facing deep political divisions, economic mismanagement, and delays in organizing national elections that continue to threaten stability and effective governance. Briefing the Security Council, UN Special Representative Hannah Sewa cautioned that competing power structures and poor financial oversight are weakening state institutions and limiting the delivery of essential services, while growing humanitarian needs, driven in part by the influx of refugees from Sudan, underscore the urgency for political compromise, constitutional consensus, and credible elections to restore legitimacy and long-term peace. Latin American migrants deported from the United States are currently stranded and fearful in Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo after being transferred under a controversial policy that sends undocumented migrants to third countries. After a long escorted flight, the migrants say they are confined to a hotel near the airport with limited freedom of movement, facing health concerns, language barriers, and uncertainty about their future, while international agencies offer voluntary return options amid growing humanitarian and social concerns. And that was it for our 6 p.m. news over Camdis Television. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure staying with you. Up next is Selactu, a presentation of Tabi Clarkson. Meanwhile, we'll meet again tomorrow when it's exactly 6 p.m. Good evening.